Hello and welcome back to Mike Reads the World. Today's video is going to be a little bit more all over the place, as I'd originally intended to do both the Odyssey and the Iliad together, but I'll talk a bit more about the Odyssey later in the video and what happened with that, but as well as some other books I have that I want to do for Greece. The Iliad is going to be the protagonist today, though. I used the translation by Richard Lattimore in print, and the newer translation by Emily Wilson in audiobook format, and used those simultaneously. I also a while back picked up the Greek plays, 16 Greek plays by the three great playwrights, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides of ancient Greece, and this is a newer translation as well, lauded by Harold Bloom. And I think for each video I do for Greece, I'm going to kind of discuss one of the playwrights. So today is going to be Aeschylus or Aeschylus. I have read all of the plays of his in here, and we'll be discussing those after the Iliad. Yeah, so I knew the basic story of the Iliad like when I was younger, and had some like illustrated editions of it. The sort of triangle of murder between Hector, Patroclus, and Achilles, and but wow, that was really a very small part of the whole book, even though it's kind of those are kind of the key moments, I suppose. But most of the book is on the Greek side. You have other heroes that are really trying to hold things together, like Diomedes and the Ajax friends, and Agamemnon. And I'll talk about this with the Aeschylus plays too, or Aeschylus. I don't know if there's people out there that like Agamemnon or think he's like a good character, but or maybe you could call him morally gray, but I just think at least by my standards, he's just such a terrible person in almost every scene. But I guess at times he does show himself to be a leader that keeps the lines together. But I mean, it's really his his brother Menelaus and the Ajax friends and Diomedes that are really holding the thing together. So anyway, that was interesting, is that there were a lot more like Greek heroes. There's Nestor too, who's kind of the storyteller, and on the Trojan side, of course, the Trojans I felt much more affinity, and the Greeks sort of being the aggressors and the Trojans the defenders. And well, technically they're all Greeks, I know, and that's something in the translation I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, so the Trojans are the defenders here, and so I related more to like Hector and Priam, and I think the ending touched me, and just I felt the ending a lot more than I expected, especially considering how much of a slog so much of the book was. Like a lot of the book is a slog. It's like reading like a history of the Vietnam War or something, just these repetitive military campaigns. It's a war that it was totally avoidable, that is pointless, and you just feel like the sense of like trying to find heroism in it, and it's tough, and just kind of raw, just ugly warfare. It's yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind, and so, but the ending really did affect me, and like the way Hector, is kind of running from Achilles, and like knows he's gonna die, and it wasn't quite the duel that I expected, but it was almost better than I expected, especially because like it's like Hector, he kind of meets his match, and this is kind of the fate. There's really this sort of this fatalism of the Greeks that really comes across in the Iliad, that there's just no escaping your destiny, and how much the gods just like appear on the battlefield, and they're like working through different characters, and then you know there's just kind of these random rules, like one character, he can strike one goddess but not strike another god or something, and it's like there you get the sense of like that people are just puppets being pulled on a string in this war, and it I mean, it captures the horror of war, absolutely, just in the most realist and brutalist sense. All the physical details and the repetitiveness and the bloodshed numbs you to the bloodshed even. So the translations, final thing, oh yeah, final thing is Priam. Yeah, the end where Priam goes to Achilles and is like, all he wants is just, to have his son back, the body of his son back. Like, he can't get his son back, but all he wants is the body. And then Achilles being able to, I guess, move on from his anger and return the body. It was a really touching scene, and I think of all the characters, Priam is the one that took my heart the most, and also the women of Troy, who are in wake of this battle, pretty much going to be defenseless against the Greek sacking of the city. And there's many mentions to that once Hector is dead, it's like the Greek women kind of know, they know it's a matter of time, and they know what's coming, and again, more of just the horrors of war. So yeah, now on to the translation. I would not recommend the rich. Did I say Richard Lattimore before? Richmond Lattimore. I would not recommend his translation of the Iliad. I think his translation of the Odyssey is better than Emily Wilson's, but I think Emily, like, slightly, not a lot, but slightly. And from what I read, I didn't read the whole thing, but I'll get to that in a second. But I think Emily Wilson's translation, when I listened to it, the audiobook version is far superior to the Richmond Lattimore version. But it was nice. I guess I'm weird. I was able to listen to the audiobook of the Emily Wilson translation while reading the Richmond Lattimore at the same time, and it acted almost as this kind of triangulation to the real meaning of the story. And my brain is able to hold like two translations, hearing one and reading one, and kind of have this middle space where I'm visualizing and getting a feel for what the decisions of the translation were. So I thought that was a really cool experience, and if that's something that works for your brain, and I'm not saying I'm superior to you if it doesn't. It's just, I guess, how my ADHD brain can somehow do that. It's, it's a pretty cool experience, and it didn't work as well for me for the Odyssey. But for the Iliad and its repetitiveness and the sort of like the battle scene after battle scene, and sort of then you have sort of like waves, right? You get a battle scene, and then you get a kind of downtime, and both the downtimes and the battle scenes were I was able to kind of hold that sort of combination of translations together. And but I think the Emily Wilson one, if I had to buy one even in print, I would recommend the Emily Wilson over the Richmond Lattimore. But yeah, I didn't care for Emily Wilson's translations in the Odyssey quite as well. There were a lot of kind of jarring, I don't know, eyebrow raising translations. Like, is that really it? And they were like way different from the Lattimore ones in the book. Whereas I felt like I could always sort of, there was always a sense that it was about the same with what I was reading in this version, even though she is pretty directly, Emily Wilson in her introduction to the Iliad is pretty directly critical of Lattimore's translations. So again, if you want two really opposed translations, just to get a sense of the choices and things like that. Yeah, she directly calls out a lot of the choices that Lattimore makes, not using his name, but using specific examples from his translation, like calling the Greeks Achaeans, or instead of Ajax, it's like Aias in this version, or Achilles is spelled different, like Achilles. There's so the Lattimore translation makes a lot of things really alien, and in the same sentence a lot of the time it'll refer to like Agamemnon by his name, and then in the same sentence call him the son of Atreus. So it's like these aren't two different characters, it's still talking about the same character. Or Atreides, it's like there's three different names basically for each character in the Lattimore translation, whereas Emily Wilson kind of distills it and makes it simpler to follow. And she also chooses just to call them Greeks and Trojans, even though it's probably more accurate to call them all different types of Greeks, like Daemon's, or I don't know. I can't remember all the different ones that Lattimore uses, but he doesn't just call them Greeks and Trojans. So that could be very confusing for the modern reader, or somebody who's kind of thinking of it in that way already. So that's my take on these translations. Um, yeah, I don't have like a bigger message. I just wanted to experience the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I guess that kind of brings me to the Odyssey. Um, yeah, the Lattimore translation. I picked this up like I don't know, it was over a year ago, and I started reading it, and was yeah, I think it was like a year and almost a year. It was pretty close to the beginning of this project, actually, this Reading the World project. So yeah, over a year, and I started reading it, and it was good. It was capturing me, but then I kind of got distracted by other books, and I set it aside, and then now coming back to it, I can't get into it, and I don't know what it is. I've tried, reading it, and it's just like I get a few pages in, and I'm just falling asleep, and I it's kind of embarrassing. Like I really want to like it, and I've tried listening to the Emily Wilson, and again, it's just my mind wanders off, and then a few minutes later, I don't even know what's happening. It's like there's some block that I right now that I just can't get into this one, and I have to say I prefer the Iliad because I can't penetrate the Odyssey right now, and I don't know. Maybe part of it is I know the story of the Odyssey, and I know that a few chapters in it's gonna get really fantastic and like fantasy like mythological, and like sorcerers and cyclops and things like that. And then I know they're gonna go home, Telemachus and Odysseus, and they're gonna slaughter all the suitors. It sounds like interesting, but I guess it's that sort of like fantasy middle when they go to Hades. That sounds really important, like for other literature. Like I want to read the Aeneid at some point. So I re-listened to a summary of the whole story just to kind of be like, okay, like why is this not exciting me? And I just think maybe it's right now I'm just having a hard time getting excited about like fantasy type literature, like really fantastical type of literature, because the nature of some of the books I'm reading is more just showing how this reality itself is so strange and wondrous and like crazy that that making up stuff, made up stuff about like sirens and dragons, and it's just I'm not able to enter any sort of abstract realm where those symbols mean anything to me. I'm thinking more like about the science and physics conversations in Cormac McCarthy's Passenger and Stella Maris. I'm thinking about Ernesto Sabato. I'm thinking about Thomas Mann, like all these really realist novels with a few strange and surreal elements, but they're really based in sort of how insane just philosophy and real life is, and trying to figure out this real life is. So I guess maybe that's why the Iliad spoke to me more, because there's this sort of raw realism, and like the horror of war is a real thing, and I feel like just the horror of war that is portrayed in the and not just the horror but the senseless nature of the conflict, and the fact that the ones that I wished could win and defend, the Trojans are like doomed to fail, and that all of this is guided by invisible hands of gods who really don't seem, they're so capricious, and they don't seem to really have the benevolence of all mankind as their priority, um, speaks a lot more truth to me than this sort of, I don't know, Odysseus and Telemachus homecoming story about them getting to keep all their wealth, and murdering all these suitors, and having these adventures. And I don't know. That's the best I can come up with right now, actually. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna talk now a little bit about the plays of Aeschylus that I read. So the point in the Odyssey where I stopped this time is actually where Nestor tells Telemachus the story of what happens in the Orestia, which is a trilogy of plays by Aeschylus. So, but actually, the Orestia was the one that least captured my attention. I did read Agamemnon. I skimmed Libation Bearers, and Eumenides looked pretty interesting, as far as like it almost being like Athena speaking to this democratic congress of citizens in the chorus. I don't know. It seemed really interesting. Um, but I guess after Agamemnon, I just kind of. But well, so the ones that really grab me though that are in here by Aeschylus or Aeschylus, somebody's probably wincing at my pronunciation of that either way. But Persians was really good, and Persians actually really tied into some of those themes I was just discussing with the Iliad. Um, Persians is basically after, so if you know the history, like in written by Herodotus, of the Persian Wars, the Persians invade Greece. You know, the movie 300, you have the stand at Thermopylae, and then the Greeks in a naval battle at Salamis wipe out the entire Persian fleet, and then the rest of the Persian army gets decimated at a battle called Plataea. And basically, the Persians, by invading Greece, the Persian Emperor Xerxes, by invading Greece, permanently weakens the Persian Empire and paves the way for Alexander the Great later to conquer Persia, basically by his anger of invading the Greeks, and his stupidity. Well, maybe not, or bad luck, whatever. But the play is about Xerxes' mother preparing to receive Xerxes as he comes home. She receives news that the Persian army has been wiped out, and the ghost of Darius, the father of Xerxes, laments this. Kind of rises from the dead for a moment and laments this, and then Xerxes is just completely distraught by this, and there's all of this lamenting, and quite and this isn't. I don't get the sense from this play at all that this is like the Greeks, like a Greek victory lap, right? Like Aeschylus saying like, "Oh, we won," and like that. You'd have to be kind of sadistic to to write a play like this and have that approach. But I don't think that's the case. I think he was showing the losses of war from the Persian side and showing how the rage and the inability to let go of this emperor and his ambition, left, you know, destroyed the youth, the entire youth of this empire, and left how many widows and created so much suffering and all these senseless deaths again. So the themes of Persians, of Aeschylus's Persians, really connect to the Iliad in that way. And so I really, really liked that one, and it definitely moved me. The other one that, of course, I really like, this is a famous one. I mentioned the Orestia, but Prometheus Bound, which is possibly by Aeschylus, they say here. So it may not even be by him. But they attribute it to his kind of part of this book. So Prometheus Bound, very famous. There's a lot of people that can talk much more eloquently about it than I can, but it's of course the character of Prometheus who gives fire to mankind. He's portrayed in the play as one of the gods himself. And he not only gave fire to mankind, but it sounds like a whole lot of other things. He's kind of been the steward of mankind's development, which, in all aspects, really. But when he gave us fire, that was like a step too far. And that's where the play opens with Hephaestus, one of the gods, dragging him to a rock, being over with these two kind of cronies of Zeus overseeing him, and then he chains Prometheus up to this rock, and then Prometheus is chained up on that rock the entire play. And this is only one of an entire trilogy, but we only have this fragment of the trilogy. And he talks to a chorus of servants of Ocean, and then Ocean comes and talks to him, and he kind of has these far-reaching visions of mankind. And there's, I think, a lot of connections that people have made and can make to, like, Paradise Lost, and I'm not even going to get into all that because I haven't read Paradise Lost yet, shamefully. That's very close. That's coming very soon. I could be really corny and do that one at 666 subscribers. We're not too far away from that. Sorry. So the Prometheus Bound, the next part of the play, he sees Io, and Io is like this woman that was turned into a cow by Hera, because Zeus was jealous. Hera was jealous of Zeus sleeping with her, and so he has a conversation with her. He sees her as kind of a symbol of how the gods don't care about people, and that we are just kind of their playthings. Again, the puppets on a string sort of thing. So this relationship that the Greeks have with their gods, I think, is, to me right now, really exemplified in the Iliad, and kind of those two aspects of the Iliad I talked about are really personified in Prometheus Bound, with humans being like fatalistic puppets on a string, and in Persians just kind of the raw horror of war and the senselessness of it. So those two plays kind of bookend the Iliad really nicely in its themes, and my heart is still with Priam, and the loss, that he feels for his son, and even getting the body back is such a small consolation. He brings all his gold. He gives Achilles all these things, and then they make a sacrifice to the gods, and it's just this sort of, I don't know. The Iliad has, to me, just a really beautiful ending. There's something just so majestic about the Iliad, and I'm not sure why I couldn't quite get into the Odyssey. as much. So, quickly, the other two books that I'm looking to potentially read for Greece is Zorba the Greek, famous one. I bought this one a while back. He's from Cyprus, so yeah, I'll definitely be reading this one at some point and making a video. And then also, I don't know if I count this for Greece or Turkey, because she was born in Constantinople, Istanbul, not Constantinople, as they might be giants say. But this is the first known history work by a woman. But more interesting than that is that this is during the First Crusade, and it's called the Alexiad. And Anna Komnena is the author. She's the daughter of the Emperor Alexius, who was the Byzantine emperor during the First Crusade, who called for help from the Pope, and he kind of oversaw these, barbarian, Germanic peoples from Europe coming through, and kind of, Anna Komnena, this is kind of, she's writing a chronicle of her father's life, and sort of, talking about all the things that went on in sort of the Byzantine palace and the intrigue and stuff. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm really curious to read this one, and maybe I'll start sooner rather than later. We'll see. But just, yeah, I've been interested to read this for a very long time, and I just happened to see it at a half-price books used bookstore, and I picked it up. So yeah, we'll talk more about that when I actually get to the video. And I got a whole stack of books here, but I figured, geez, maybe I'll just talk about them as they come up. This video is long enough, I think. Yeah, 26 minutes. So, thanks for watching, and that is our first episode of a few that will come in the future for Greece, and we can color it off on the map. And the next video will more likely than not be a different country. But we have two very interesting books coming up, which I'll introduce both of them at the beginning of the next video when I talk about the first of the two. So yeah, thanks for watching and take care.